It just occurred to me after so long doing this, where is the actual stage? This is like the Backstage episode.
All the world is a stage.
I feel like we've
It's a
been
virtual
tricked.
stage.
I think that we have some.
Does anybody notice anything different?
No, it doesn't work if you put your mouth right up next to the mic and then ask if it's
No,
louder.
I was.
Of course,
Yeah.
It's actually a little lower now than it was when I was testing, which I find a little odd.
it's.
I was testing it, but it was like peaked out when I was testing it. Now it's about halfway. That's
It only
strange.
works in
because all I did was
rehearsals,
hit record. In any event, I took
Cameron Kwesi.
something like 15 feet of USB cable out of there, and it certainly looks better on the levels anyway.
It sounds great.
It's marvelous.
Well, this is good
Well,
because
of course,
we've
that's
had
just in my tiny little earbud. So what do I know?
a number of our listening audio experts have offered their sage advice, like, "What the hell's wrong with Bill's audio?"
And have you tried plugging it in again?
See, folks, and what
I think my problem was basically that I hadn't realized that I need to speak into the machine.
You beat me to it. Yeah, that's what we're now speaking into the machine. So apparently, if you run a really long cable, the audio leaks out. It's like one of those irrigation hoses, where there's just a whole bunch of holes in it, and then the sound waves just come out. You can't hear them because it's coming out in little tiny pores. But
The electrons slow down. By the time they get to the end of a 15-foot USB cable, they're doing like 6 miles an hour or something like
and
that.
thus the phrase "in the long run." That's where that came from, actually.
Anyway, this should be a lot better.
Yeah.
But I do feel like we've been tricked. I think we've been doing this Backstage episode for a long time and thinking that at some point we get to be out on the stage. The main
We
stage.
had a stage at PJTV. Well, one of us did, I suppose.
Well,
Yeah.
yes.
I was in my basement.
And by the way, by stage, what Bill means is imagine the world's smallest in-ground swimming pool if you painted the inside of it green.
Turned it up sideways.
Yeah, it was up on its edge.
I've said before, the thing was amazing about that was I must have done a couple hundred afterburners in there, honestly, at least that. And since the green cube is behind me, I'm looking out at the monitors, and the monitor's doing real-time keying. I just assumed that I was always against that set, and every now and then I would see like raw footage from the booth of like me against a green background. It's like, wow, what the hell? That real-time keying was actually pretty good for
pretty cool.
2008.
Yeah.
And that's why we're here right now, as a matter of fact.
Is.
So for those of you new members, and new members continue to pour in a massive trickle of on a daily basis. What's the word? It's a cataract of new members that has been cascading into our presence. This is where we discuss the upcoming shows, the right angle programs that we plan to do this week, and kind of kick it around a little bit to find out whether it's worth even showing up for work. So far, what we've found is that we can show up for work even when it's not worth it. And
It's an important life skill.
And we're glad
It's
to
an
do so.
exercise in futurity.
It's. I thought it was fertility. What is the word that you're
Nope.
supposed to use there?
I can't get anybody to pay me to riot, so I show up here.
There's money in that? You can get paid to do
Oh,
that?
yeah.
I mean, other than what you're able to claim along the way in the way of electronics and high-end shoes. There's actually...
Oh, yeah. There's like Soros money and stuff behind that. I just found out today that I'm not going to talk about this, I don't think, other than right here. The Portland protesters have access to $1.3 million in bail money and pro bono lawyers.
Now, this is the actual cash portion, not the, like, because when you post bail, it's like a lot of times it's 10% of the actual amount.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's typical, I understand. So, yeah, they've got access to all this bail money, pro bono lawyers. And so it's a catch and release program, essentially. And pretty much it's the same people out there every single night assaulting police, setting stuff on fire. You know the word.
So,
Large donations from very rich communists. Let that sink in.
Yeah.
how does a communist get very rich?
Well, here's the thing. Nobody believes in the dictatorship of the proletariat or nationalizing the means of production or any of that stuff. What they do believe in, though, is centralizing political power into a very few hands at the very upper levels. And what they use is not Marxist ideology, but what I call Marxian thinking, which is you form various pressure groups based on easily recognizable traits, whether it's race or sexual orientation or whatever, to divide people against one another. And then you follow the Ellsworth-Toohey formula from the Fountainhead, which is divide and conquer, and then unite and rule. Caligula's saying, if all of Rome only had one neck.
I wish I'd thought of this on my own. I thought I did for about 3 seconds, and I realized I actually got this off of Orson Bean. So it's not Marxist, but it's Marxish.
Marxish, yes.
It's kind of
Marxish philosophy.
What they are is to Marxism as tennis clothing is to people who don't really play tennis or something like that.
Yeah,
it's like
that's right.
People who dress for an activity in which they do not engage.
Outdoor activewear for people that never leave the house. Yeah.
Yes, or cowboy hats for people who don't know
four-wheel
which end of
off-road
the cow to
vehicles for
milk.
people that have never been outside of their driveway.
Yeah, it's that kind of thing. So what was the point in all this? Looting. So if you're looting, and I need some tips, and maybe some of our members who are professional looters can tell me about this, but if you're looting, how selective do you have to be? Like, for example, if I break into like a Nike store, well, I wear a size 12 and actually at a particular width of a size 12, and just a normal size 12 is not going to work for me. So if I break the window and rush into that store, am I just going to grab boxes in hopes of reselling them? Or is there any in there? Like, is there anybody sitting down and trying them on is what I'm wondering.
Yeah, a really progressive company would, a shoe store company would organize their product on the shelves by size rather than by style, so that
put the expensive stuff up front.
Yeah, so looters
you didn't have to waste time
directly to the correct size.
It's got to do with size, which is ungainliness versus value. So just to help you out, it's diamonds first, big screen TVs second, track shoes third, and then rolls of paper towel fourth. I think it's pretty much get you on your way anyway, get you started till you get some experience.
I'm just picturing some guy in there going, "Hey, would you mind telling me what the refresh rate is on this big screen TV? Because I don't want to get one of those 120s. I'm really going for the 240.
I'm not committing a felony for anything less than 120 megahertz.
Okay. So
I walked out of Best Buy with $1,295 worth of justice.
That's right. Can we, what's the word for it? Debit or credit? I can never remember. I failed accounting in college. But can we debit that from your reparations account? Like when we finally do get the reparations, Can we say, okay, well, you were going to get $150,000, but we're going to have to subtract these Michael Jordans and we're going to have to take off this TV set.
When those reparations come around, they're going to owe us a lot of money. A lot of money.
I got
to write that down.
Economic philosopher once said, maybe we'll be there to share the land that they'll be given away when we all live together. So we're all hoping for that. And nobody watching this now is old enough to remember that song. So I get to go first this week because I am hosting an additional episode. Not just one, mind you, but 100% more than that. And I have two concepts.
That's nearly double.
That's right. By the way, speaking of which, this is not my topic, but I'm watching the news. And kudos to NPR. And actually, I'm watching CNN, and then I went and took a shower, and I told the device to, I'm not going to say the name because it'll start talking to me, but I told the device to play the news, and it defaults to NPR News. Well, they did this story, which everybody's doing right now, about kids going back to school and the impact that that has had upon infection rates. And the guy who did the story for NPR started off, with the kind of alarming stuff, and then said, essentially, but the good news is that actually very few, it's like children are like 1.4% of those who get infected with the coronavirus or something like that. It's some tiny little amount. But anyway, he brought in these sort of mitigating factors at the end of his story, which was only 30 seconds or a minute, and mentioned the fact that really it's not that bad. CNN, on the other hand, had a reporter standing on somebody's lawn, I don't know, the White House or somewhere, and they were saying the infection rate since kids returned to school among children is up 137%. And I thought, wait a minute, 137%, that's like a little more than doubled. And before they were quarantined.
No, it's not doubled. 200% would be doubled.
What's that?
100% is doubled. 100% more is twice as many.
100% is doubled, yeah. So it's up 137% what it was before. In any case, I'm like, shouldn't it be a lot more than that? I mean, because they were quarantined before, you would think it would have gone up some thousands of percent, because now we're putting them all together in buildings where, of course, just a handful of people have it, and kids are the worst. You know, they pay no attention to their personal hygiene. They're not even like adults in the sense that they don't know to hide when they're picking their noses, and they just, you know, they're out there in public doing all that. I would figure that the stats would be much, much worse. And CNN was like breathlessly reporting that. And in one place, it was like there were 4 deaths before, and now there have been 7. Like 7? This is the terror for which we need to batten down the hatches again and make sure no child ever goes out.
You know, if you could imagine the Spanish influenza of 1918, 1919 was so awful in part because it attacked people in the prime of life in their 20s and early 30s. And it killed them by the millions. And we are lucky in the sense, not that there's anything good about a pandemic. Oh, dear God, this is one of those once in a century monsters. But we are lucky in that it spares children almost completely. It spares young people almost as completely. And it's those who are either very old or have serious comorbidities who are the real victims of this thing. And as a result, I thought our once in 100-year plague, which was going to happen in my lifetime, that was just the odds, was going to be far worse than this.
My great-grandfather's first wife died in that influenza. So they had a total of, my great-grandfather spawned a total of 9 children. And like 2 or 3.
Spawned?
Yes. He swims upstream. He actually goes out into the deep for like 3 years, and then he comes back and he swims upstream over the waterfalls and everything. And so anyway.
And
but
you were one of the spawn of his loins? Is that what I fully understand?
There were 9 children that came forth from his loins, and several of them sprang is the word I was looking for. They sprang from his loins.
Yeah, as they are wont to do.
That's right.
At that age.
I want out of this conversation.
So anyway, but several of those children were born to his first wife, who perished as a young woman in the great influenza in like somewhere around 1918, 19, something like that. So, you know, that you're right. That was a big dang deal, and relatively young people were dying. Anyway, I just thought, what a contrast between the way CNN goes about it. Like, it's almost like you could have a reporter stand in front of a microphone and go, coronavirus, there's a number. It is a number, I tell you, number. Like, it doesn't matter what that is. Okay.
The new number is bigger than the old one.
That's right. All right. So here's my first topic, and this is kind of in our local news segment, which will be broadcast globally. I found an interesting story locally. The governor of Texas, when we went back to sort of some shutdown stuff, has essentially given options to most businesses that will allow them easily to remain open. However, bars just came under a blanket shutdown. So we have to shut down bars. So you think, oh, okay, that's where people cluster together in close proximity. A lot of times people are packed into bars, and that's probably safe. But what is a bar? So they have to define what a bar is, you know, and the bar, it turns out, is a business that makes at least 51% of its revenue from selling alcoholic beverages. Okay, so
I can hear the bullet button coming.
Oh, yeah.
What's that?
The bullet button was a stupid law they had in California to eliminate AR-15 sales, where you couldn't have a detachable magazine defined as something that required a tool. So they basically made it so that if you push the tip of a AR-15 round into this bullet button, you could drop the magazine about as fast. And so,
technically, not
once
a
again,
tool.
the people outsmart the government in about 10 seconds.
So what's happening is that there are restaurants, for example, which serve alcohol, and alcohol, of course, has a higher price than the average food dish. And so if you go in and buy a hamburger and 2 beers, then the cost of your alcohol was more than the cost of your beer. And so it's very easy for a restaurant to wind up at 51% alcohol sales, and therefore they have to close.
They lower the price of the alcohol?
So, no, of course not. That's not going to
No.
Are you kidding me? And then the other
They raise
challenge,
the price of the food?
and we'll get into the details on this later, but the other thing was a lot of bars said, okay, well, what if we were a restaurant? So you have to figure out a way somehow to get your revenues so that less than 51% of your revenue is coming from alcohol. So some of these bars that were able to opened, amped up kind of food production so that they could do it. And they had to have a permanent kitchen, and it's got to be like a legitimate kitchen in there. And so the whole thrust of the story is these businesses trying to figure out a way to survive. And something like 2/3 of the brewers, the private breweries in Texas, 2/3 of them don't think that they're going to be open by the end of 2020. This is going to devastate them. But there are bars now that are reopening as restaurants, but they're really bars. And some who can't figure out a way to do. My favorite was a woman who owns 2 bars. One's called the Double Wide and the other's called the Single Wide.
Love it.
Which I love. But in order to put a kitchen in, she'd have to spend $30,000. She said $15,000 for the grease trap alone. And she can't afford to do that. So anyway, it's kind of a dual
Start
story.
a Kickstarter campaign. She can't afford not to do it.
Yeah.
Right? She's going to be
And
gone.
and we've talked about this before, but why not say, look, it was when we were talking about the nail salon, Salon a la Mode, with the lady who, protested. Yeah. You can go back and watch that episode at billwhittle.com. But why do you target businesses by type? Why don't you just have guidelines? If you must do something, why not just have guidelines for everybody? So I work at a retail store.
But that would be far less arbitrary.
Yeah. I mean, I'm working at a big retail store.
But that's the problem.
There are guidelines. You got to wear a mask, social distancing, all that kind of stuff.
It's the arbitrariness that is so appealing to them.
And maybe they're saying if you're drunk, you can't observe those things. I don't know.
Maybe they're saying, do what I tell you to do. I keep
Governor
saying to
Abbott.
myself,
He's a conservative
even in
Republican.
Texas, I keep saying to myself out here in California, it's like, I just want to say to Newsom, when will we be able to stop this? When something, okay, what conditions, let me rephrase the question, Governor. What specific conditions have to be met in order for the state of emergency to be lifted? What are the specific conditions that have to be met before that can happen? And you know what? I'd be willing to bet you a large sum of money that there are no set of specific conditions that have to be met. It will be when he damn well feels like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's no benchmark, and
There's no goalposts, none.
Yes, but unlike most people who watch anything on the internet, I tend to try to give everybody the benefit of the doubt. Like, I don't think that Greg Abbott, just because he's done something I disagree with, has done it for malevolent purposes or because he's greedy for power and wants to show those bar patrons who's boss. I really don't think that that's what's going on. I think he's probably motivated to do the right thing. As
I agree, but that's Texas.
As far as he can see it.
The fact that he's offering like alternatives and choices and letting counties decide, that's an indication that he's like on the side of the people to some degree. That's Texas. It's not the same as what we got here.
By the way, if you're a bar and you want to get your food sales up so that you can get your alcohol sales as a percentage down, Well, obviously, how are you going to reopen that place when you don't have a track record of revenues? So the Texas state agency that monitors this, the Bureau of Alcohol and Muckety Mucks or whatever it is, they, I forget which organization it is, but anyway, they allow you to submit projections of what your sales will be when you reopen as a restaurant. So I'm thinking,
love Texas. I love it. You just dial your own revenue in, right?
That's
to stay
right.
legal.
It's like, let's see, I think my new business will generate 50.5% from alcohol.
My restaurant is going to generate zero revenue from alcohol sales. However, we do have the $23 plate of French fries that comes with a martini.
That's right. It's a side. It's just like you don't have to
whether you
pay
order
extra.
it or not. Yeah, it's a side. Exactly.
It's part of the package. So anyway, and there's a couple of other little tricks that some people have tried, including one restaurant I've actually been to, which is kind of a lot of them are like bar restaurants. They're not really. It's not purely a restaurant. It's kind of like Applebee's.
Yeah, sports bars are like,
Yeah. Anyway, so that's one show right there. And I'm sure similar things are happening in other areas of the country. And then the other one, this was interesting. Royal Caribbean stock is surging on news of strong bookings for the 2021 season.
How about that?
And something like 60% of their bookings are coming from new customers. And so not only is there a lot of pent-up demand from people who would normally cruise, because there's a whole bunch of cruisies that are out there that they're, when you go on a cruise, you'll definitely meet at least one person who says, I've just spent the last 3 months jumping from one ship to another. Like they go on a 1-week cruise and then they get on the next ship. They never go home. They just keep going.
Wow.
Anyway, so just to give you a sense of it, Royal Caribbean's stock, the 52-week high for it was at about 135, okay? The March low, this was back in March of 2020, of course, was 19.25. So you're at less than 20 after a 52-week high of 135. But right now, the last I checked in the middle of the day today, which is the 11th of August, they're at like 60. And they're surging because people are booking things. They are burning $250 million a month. Can you imagine?
Yep.
250. Wow. But they said we still have plenty of liquidity. I'm like, why does he say liquidity? Like why does he say we have plenty of money? Well, because they don't really have money. They've actually raised $6.5 billion in the last 5 months. Theoretically, I guess, from investors who were saying, yeah, we'll keep giving you money because we think this is going to turn around.
I really am interested in the fact that a lot of these people are new people.
Yeah.
'Cause that's telling me like there's a whole class of people out there like, I am so damn tired of being locked in my frickin' house for a year. Not only do I want to get back out into the world, I want to get out to the open ocean and breathe some air and not have to deal with this nonsense,
Yeah, I've been writing so much lately. Things are just there's been so much to say. I've been writing so much more for PJ that my wife said she was going on a walk on Sunday, and I couldn't join her. And besides, she wanted to do this thing. She was going to, dictate into her phone for the novel she's working on. Said she was going on another one yesterday. And before I knew it, it was Melissa, myself, and both kids on a nice little mile or so long walk up the big horseshoe-shaped hill street that kind of surrounds our little cul-de-sac. And it was lovely just to get out of this office. Didn't actually go anywhere except in an actual circle. I can understand this. I can really understand this.
It's probably a good time for me to mention that the original idea for Strata Cruise was going to be a submarine cruise. And it was going to be 6 people at $85,000 each and shoulder to shoulder, hot bunk. You're breathing the same air. And of course, there's no windows, so you don't actually see anything. But it would be an incredible fun 3 months. And it just didn't sell anything like as well as I thought it would. I was really heartbroken by that. I'm gonna have to put that on the same thing as Bat on a Stick and attribute it to this COVID-19 lightning bolt destroyed my bat taco idea.
Well, we have. I've been talking with an agent who's going to put together the package for the Scott Ott Wicked Tuna Cruise. So we'll be going off the Outer Banks, and you don't actually have to pay for the cruise in advance. But you will have to pay for it in arrears if you fail to catch enough tuna in order to fund the operations.
Wicked.
My lovely bride was away for a couple of days, and it's weird being alone in the house. Like, I just love it.
Things fall apart pretty fast with them gone.
Yeah, I love her being around, like just being here to know that any moment I want, like, it's like as if you had, like, you know, a Da Vinci in the closet here, and anytime you wanted, you could open the closet and just see this fantastic work of art. So that's the way I think about Stephanie being here. And she was gone for several days, and I'm like, I don't usually watch TV unless we're watching TV together, but I think I'll just turn on the TV. So I turned on the TV, and it was Shark Week. And you know, this is how the news has gotten to me, that I found watching Shark Week to be oddly calming. I was just
no, really, I know exactly what you say. No more.
I've never watched Shark Week. What am I missing out on here?
Just people being mauled to death by animals, but it's not nearly so stressful as what's going on in the real world.
That's right.
I could handle some mauling.
It was like a Vivaldi concerto. I mean, I was just like,
of mauling.
Yes, well, and
Yeah,
not all
Natasha
of it.
goes for
Not all of it is shark attacks, but certainly there's a lot of that, and a lot of, you know, faux drama building up to, you know, when the shark takes a bite at the cage.
and nothing happens. It's in search of.
Yeah.
I blame in search of for all of these ills.
That was Leonard Nimoy, wasn't it? What didn't he?
Yes, every single week. Let's examine this new mystery, and at the end of it, it's like, this is an alternate explanation for what we have no evidence, nothing new. It's just retelling the same old story. It's like, did we learn anything? No. You told me that you would show me pictures of the Loch Ness Monster. Actually, we said that we would discuss the possibility that there may have been pictures of the Loch Ness. You sons of bitches.
I
Well, they
remember
never
being
said-
very
it's kind of-
disappointed in the Ancient Astronauts episode in particular.
It's kind of like the difference between fishing and catching. Like, I go fishing a lot, I just don't do any catching. And so in search of, they're not saying they found anything. It's not called Eureka.
No, it's the direct lineal grandfather of ghost hunters or whatever those
Yeah.
god awful things.
It's like every episode
something on the
ever of
detector.
Scooby-Doo. So then I'm watching this Shark Week as I, you know, just go do chores and code. I'm learning to code, and then that morphs into a whole marathon of Wicked Tuna. This is a show, Steve. It's called Wicked Tuna, and these guys it's a competition among 5 or 6 of little businesses on these boats, and they got like 3 or 4 people per boat, and they are out off the Outer Banks in miserable weather usually, and they're trying to catch tuna. And when
It's the deadliest catch on the East Coast.
yeah, this isn't deadliest catch though. That's like lobsters or something, isn't it?
No, I'm saying it's the deadliest catch moved to the East Coast
For tuna.
with tuna.
Yes, that's right.
With tuna.
So
It's the same show, though.
So then they catch them, and these suckers are like 95 inches long. So these are big fish. And then they take them in, and there's this scene that repeated over and over. It's almost identical every single time, where they take a slice out of the tuna, like this kind of watermelon shaped slice, and they lay it on a table, and then they do a core sample. And then this woman or whoever runs the buying business looks at it and goes, well, I see it's a little fatty in here. And then they have this core sample thing where they leak it out onto this tray, and it's like
the fish is dead when they're doing this, right?
Yes, or at least he's feigning death.
He's been humanely tranquilized with a general anesthetic.
Yes, he has. But anyway, and then the fish merchant will go. The fishmonger will say, "That's $17 a pound," and then all the guys from the boat will high five each other like, "We'll take it." They never haggle. And whether it's $17 a pound or $13 a pound, they always say, we'll take it. And I think the reason they do that is because they're getting money for letting the camera crew be on their boat.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they'd be 13,000
They're
pounds.
they're not in the tuna fishing business. They're in the TV
Some of these things
business.
are like 2,000-3,000 pounds, aren't they? I mean, they're just
No, they're
insane.
400 or 500 pound kind of.
But they're tens of thousands of dollars is what I meant to say.
They're
Something like that.
So
Right?
I think I saw like anywhere from $5,000 to $8,000 per tuna for one fish. But a day is you may not catch a fish, but if you catch a fish, you've had a good day. Anyway, and
That's some good eating.
There are two guys named Ott on the show. There's a Tim and a TJ Ott. They're father and son couple. That sounded creepy.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's it. Royal Caribbean, Wicked Tuna, Shark Week. It's all together. Oh,
It's all interwoven.
by the way, the sidebar on the Royal Caribbean story, Texas state sales tax revenue up $3 billion in July. It's up 4.3% from last July. And the interesting thing about that is people are spending money on household projects in the summer when they might have ordinarily, I don't know, gone on a cruise.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it.
Fascinating.
Have we used up all the tape yet?
Nope,
Wow.
I still
have
haven't
tape.
spoken. Neither has Mr. Green, I don't think.
I think I'm maxing out the audio meter on this thing. Man, it's really pegging. Okay, so Steve Green, what would you like to talk about on this week's Right Angle?
I want to talk about the inevitable crackdown in Hong Kong. Did you hear what happened yesterday with Jimmy Lai?
What is that? What is Jimmy Lai?
He
LAI.
is a Hong Kong tycoon. He's a media tycoon. He publishes Apple Daily, which is a pro-democracy newspaper. He was arrested once before, actually, I think just detained back in 2014 for partaking in a pro-democracy demonstration. So, I mean, this is a guy who's made a lot of money, but he puts everything on the line, criticizing Beijing and promoting democracy for Hong Kong. 200 Hong Kong police or thereabouts showed up at his company's offices on Monday morning, took out 25 boxes of documents, took him away in handcuffs and his sons too.
Wow.
And this is under the new law. You remember when the Hong Kong protests were a big thing before COVID shut it down?
Yeah.
What they were protesting was this bill that was moving through the communist rubber stamp parliament in
It's an
Beijing.
extradition bill.
It's a national security law for Hong Kong. And it effectively would end the one country, two systems that has been guaranteed by the 1985 treaty with Britain that was supposed to keep Hong Kong semi-independent up until 2047, 50 years after the handoff. It does things like it defines it to be a crime to collude with foreign agents, and collusion and foreign agents both left undefined. This is
Facebook post ought to do it.
yeah. This is what Jimmy Lai was arrested for, and his sons too, yesterday. It also defines as a crime to, if I can remember the words correctly, I have to look this up before we shoot the segment, but to challenge or diminish the authority of the government in Beijing. And one of the rights that Hong Kongers enjoyed before this bill was finally, after the protest died down due to COVID, the rubber stamp Congress in Beijing finally passed the thing, and Xi signed it immediately, of course. It's been in effect for 6 weeks. Oh, shoot, I just lost my train of thought.
Steve, I think it's illegal to diminish the authority of the Chinese communist regime because that's the job of the Chinese communist government regime, is to diminish their authority.
And I do remember my thought here. Under the treaty with Britain, the handover agreement, Hong Kongers continue to enjoy the right of trial by jury and in Hong Kong. They couldn't be whisked away to China for a secret trial like the communist
that was the
government
big
does on
deal. It was the
mainland.
extradition aspect of this that a lot of people really got upset about.
Hong Kong right to jury trial dates back to 1845 when the British first showed up and started running things there. This isn't something new from 1997. This goes way back. It's well established. And now Jimmy Lai, Mike, and his kids, his sons, who are part of the business, could legally be whisked away to the mainland for a kangaroo court. We don't know what's going to happen to this guy. What we do know, though, is sales of the newspaper have increased Oh, Lord, from 70,000 daily circulation today to 550,000 copies of Apple Daily sold. So we're going to talk about what it means to crack down and what it means to be there and to continue supporting Hong Kong independence in whatever way you can.
I heard the other day that the Trump administration has actually sanctioned Carrie Lam, the puppet leader of Hong Kong, and some others, like 5 or 10 others.
Well, we'll talk about the American domestic angle too then. And since, Scott, you brought it up, I'm going to ask you about that on
just because I
segment.
brought it up, don't assume I know anything about it. I have a liberal arts education, which means I can speak intelligently on any topic for up to 7 seconds.
Completely devoid of knowledge, which I find to be just liberating.
I am
Since I didn't graduate, I don't have that limitation. That explains so much of this
a liberal
trio.
What we call it as a liberal arts degree is a good conversation starter. It's that's you can't really go any further.
I call it a gold mine.
That's right. It's a license to print ramen.
That's right. I'm so glad I went to college before ramen came out, because I would have just would have.
Oh, I nearly died of sodium poisoning.
It just wasn't there when I was in college, and I just would have done so much of it. It's just scary.
I'm telling you, and I'm sure many of our viewers are sharing this experience right now. My mouth is watering right now.
There's a ramen place here in tiny little Monument, Colorado. It's run by this lovely couple, and their moms are in there working all the time too. And I was really worried they wouldn't make it through the shutdown, because their stuff is just so right there that it didn't travel well. I did take out a couple of times.
What do you mean a place? It doesn't come from a place. It comes in little styrofoam
and was
cups.
so disappointed.
No, not the real stuff. The real stuff doesn't come in styrofoam cups. It comes in rectangular bricks, and you take it out of a plastic bag.
Yeah. I lived on that stuff in college. That's why I said I almost died of sodium poisoning. Those flavor packets, man, if I could have found the flavor packets for sale separately, I would have put 2 or 3 of those things in every single pack of noodles.
I
can come close to that.
I wanted them to sell pouches like they do for tobacco, where you could just slip a little pouch of ramen.
Oh yeah, feel the burn.
Little chaw. When I was growing up in the planetarium, I was during the weekends, we would keep the observatory on the roof open all night. And at 2:00 in the morning or 3:00 in the morning, there's nothing to eat. There was a coffee machine downstairs that offered chicken soup. And it poured this, it just shot this little burst of like yellow orange powder into the bottom of the thing, and a couple of little green chunks. And then they spew like boiling hot water on it. And then you're supposed to let it sit for 5 or 6 weeks. And then when you drink it, it was just bloody delicious is what it was.
Did you ever, or were you tempted to stir that with a Pillsbury space food stick?
Oh, no, I wouldn't ever pollute a space food stick with vending machine chicken soup. Those babies are hard to find now. The fudge ones, I remember those. I used to just eat nothing but those things.
Oh, that was
space food sticks.
That was like just pleasure congealed into a consistency of like Doberman feces.
Do you know, now that I think about
congealed
it,
pleasure.
I'm not entirely sure that a space food stick wasn't just a Tootsie Roll without the markings on it to snap it off. It's probably like, let's just repackage this as the space age, for God's sakes. Space Tootsie Rolls. No, that's not going to.
It's kind of like the Post-it notes where they were trying to make a super adhesive, but actually it came out as being not. It only holds slightly. So that was how Post-it notes came about, and the guy who did that started using them to mark pages in his hymnal because he was in a church choir, and you could just peel those things off and stick them on the next page. I think the same thing happened here. They were actually trying to make a super hard Tootsie Roll, but instead they came out with the Doberman feces consistency of the Pillsbury space food stick.
But the space food stick supplied all your nutritional needs for the following week, if I remember correctly.
Oh, it was just 8,000 calories in that thing.
Well, certainly all my needs. So, Bill Whittle, we are now pressing up against a world record here, and you haven't even started talking. So,
oh, my.
So this could be impressive.
First, I want to have a sirloin steak pill, and a mashed potatoes pill, and a peas with butter pill.
That's right.
From my space station food supply that I have just down here.
I think they're already manufactured by the British company.
People won't
Sirloin
eat in
of
the
Beef.
future. I remember that very clearly. You would just take a food pill, and it would taste exactly like steak.
That's right.
And I remember believing that. Like, what about the chewing part and the filling you up part? No, we haven't covered that technology just yet.
It's like a shrinky dink that could, or no, that's the opposite. What is the things that blow up?
Jiffy
Bombs.
Pops.
Maxi pads, or no, that's not.
No. So I want to do the story that was brought to us by Instapundit, and it was the Washington Post looking at these Portland protesters, and it basically was a fashion chic show for it was like Franny Leibowitz photographing the Portland protesters in her studio, you know?
Nice.
And there would be a picture of the normal person in their normal life, you know, farming hemp or composting or whatever our day-to-day job is in Portland. And then they would show them in their riot gear against like a white background. And I thought
You mean
to
their
myself,
peaceful protest gear?
they're mostly peaceful protest gear. And I thought to myself, you know what this reminds me of, guys? It reminds me of cosplay. Is what it reminds me of.
They're LARPers.
It reminds me of cosplay. It's a bunch of betas getting dressed up as like either soldiers or maybe Roman gladiators, or perhaps they're orcs, or maybe they're I don't know, Klingons, but they're getting dressed up and they're in their macho kind of stuff. And the best part about it is, I don't know whether the photographer cued him on this. I suspect probably did, but when you see the pictures of them in their official, mostly peaceful protest gear, they've all got this kind of, I'm going to rip your throat out, kind of thing. But
Like
when
he
you see
really
them,
thinks he's the Incredible Hulk at that point.
but when you see them in their like, because they do like a home picture, it's like, here's the regular guy and here's what he looks like dressed up. And one old guy on a lawnmower, and they show him dressed up, and he looks like Freddy Krueger's demented uncle. He just looks like a guy. It's like, okay, Dad, get off the lawn. And so I want to talk about the glorification of this and the whole thing, but basically I want to talk about how, once again, it's rich white people dressing up so they can look like they're tough guys, Because you can see it, every single one of them. When you see them in their combat outfits, you can tell they've spent a lot of time and effort making sure that everything kind of works together. It's like that carpet that kind of ties the whole apartment together. It's like, I got this kind of breastplate armor thing that I found, and I'm going to use go with a blue on the shield and maybe kind of a light blue on the. It's just so childish, is what it is. So I think a little mockery would.
Are some of the outfits catching on so that other protesters are looking to emulate the same thing? Like they're coming up with, like, oh, I really like that look. I think if I could cobble that together from my mom's closet.
In the first person shooter was Wolfenstein.
Yeah.
But the second one was Doom, and in Doom, the ultimate weapon was called the BFG 9000, and we leave it to your imagination to fill in what the letters might have stood for.
It's a Joe Biden
But the protesters now, and one of them has it. The equivalent, the Portland equivalent of the BFG 9000 is a leaf blower.
Hey, those are
looks
coming in handy.
Looks a bit like a plasma cannon. If you were to take it to Comic-Con, which I think they really should. But I think it's designed to blow tear gas back
That's what
away
they're
from
doing
you or
with
something.
them. They are using leaf blowers to disperse tear gas. Which I thought was actually kind of clever.
Yes. Why do you need tear gas? Why do the police need to bring tear gas to a peaceful protest?
That's right.
It's a mystery.
Because
you
they
know
want to
about this
provoke
microwave
them.
crowd control thing we have, don't you? You've heard of this?
What's that?
Heard of what?
The microwave crowd control technology we have. It's not. I'm not joking now. It's real.
Yeah, it burns the skin.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't actually burn the skin, but it feels like it.
And apparently they did a test of this where the general in charge of developing the program and all of these officers and everybody went out, I mean, like real military guys, went out there and stood on the field and they turned this thing on, and in the space of 3 or 4 seconds, they had just run as fast as they could. No permanent damage, but they said they felt like their skin was boiling.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, is it possible that we're going to see some of these cosplay Antifa outfits on the runway?
Yes,
we're
going to do a montage about that.
No, I'm wondering if they're going to be at the fashion shows. They're going to be on the runway.
Oh,
yeah,
no
New
doubt.
York Fashion
Well,
Week.
they shot like a fashion show.
Yeah.
The reason we're going to do a montage is because we don't pay by the hour, we pay by the show. So it doesn't really matter how many elements we put in, as far as I'm concerned.
I feel sorry
Mark does
for
a great
that
job. You really do need to see the pictures. I'll send you guys a link just to give you a taste
Yes.
of it. But it's... I'm a tough guy. It's like another way for progressives to pretend that they're conservatives, you know? I'm a soldier and I'm in the war. Don't you ever look at me funny because I'll burst into tears.
You kids
As soldiers are wont to do
you
in
kids
combat.
get off of my lawn, please.
Losers.
All righty then. Well, that sounds like fun.
And so it is.
So we will get about shooting that. I think we have set a new record. We have just crested the horizon of 45 minutes on the counter here.
Wow.
Does that mean we get to run twice as many commercials? Do we get to? So what's 2 times 0?
Yeah, it's seen by literally dozens of people.
Countless.
Carry the 2. I don't know.
So, ladies and gentlemen, this is where we kowtow before you in humility and beg your indulgence. I mean, thank you for the money that you provided that makes it possible for us to do the real shows, not this one. This is like a bonus show. This really doesn't cost a whole lot. We were going to use the tape anyway.
Obviously.
And we can recycle it. We're not going to trash it up with any special graphics or effects or anything like that, or
Or
personalities.
expectations or anything of that nature. Entertainment, information. This all costs money.
The quality goes in before the name goes on, and it doesn't really have a name, does it?
And frankly, the only real budget we have is nitrous oxide for me. So I really enjoy this, even if you don't care. So thank you so much for making it possible. Bill, you look like you had a thought.
I know it's just a little. I just happen to have the analytics page open here, and it says we usually get. This month so far we're tracking 673,000 views for the 28-day period, and it says it goes between generally. It said generally between 601,000 and 871,000. That's every 28 days, but that's it's like in 2 weeks you got 1.5 million views. It's like.
There are people
Well,
watching.
now it's spread over 90 shows, but nevertheless, it's still
And 4
pretty
people.
impressive. It's actually a pretty impressive number. I hadn't really thought about that. If we've been doing this for 5 years here, no more than that.
4.5,
6?
about 4.5 years
Was
since.
I thought we started in 14.
No, the old network went dark, like in the middle of the GOP
2016.
primary in 2016.
Yeah.
Okay,
April
so
2016.
5 years. I'm going to just total up the number of views. That's a number.
And by the way, we haven't even been doing the sort of podcast version, the audio only version of the show. We haven't even been doing that for a year yet, and I just accidentally stumbled upon the numbers for that. And it's an escalating. It's not a curve. It's really like a line that's going just in an upward direction. So more and more people.
Hold on. Sorry. You said in an upward direction?
Yeah, well, yeah, shocking. That was my. I had to actually write to SoundCloud and I said, what does it mean when the left side of the graph, as I'm looking at it, is lower than the right side of the graph?
I suppose there was a 50-50 chance now that I think about it.
It was a coin toss. But more and more people are actually listening to us without seeing the privilege of seeing us. They're just doing the audio version of it. And you can do that on any of your favorite podcasting devices or at soundcloud.com. We also post, if you haven't noticed before, there's the audio version underneath every video posting on the website. Just in case, you're concerned that your spouse will walk by and go, are you watching those 3 men again? So this time you just don't even have to watch. You can listen if you want to.
So you can listen to us but not see us. And we should give Serious Thoughts opening an Instagram account where they can see us but not listen to us. And let's do that. And 1 year later, we'll have 2 subscribers, and one will be from my email address and the other will be from my other email address.
Pretty soon the entire show is just going to be an animated jife.
Don't say that.
When we can figure out a way to get them to pay us to shut up, that's when the real money's going to come in.
And that's what we're going to do right
We're
about
working
now.
on that.
So, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for watching. For Bill Whittle and Stephen Green, I'm Scott Ott. We appreciate your membership.